Hello, and you are back in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. This is our 92nd episode, and today we'll be discussing that Europe wants change and the projection is unreal. So, as always, we're going to get right into this with an article from the Gateway Pundit. Actually, both these articles are from the Gateway Pundit that I'll be talking about today, but the first one is Marine Le Pen trounces Emmanuel Macron, EU elections. Macron calls for snap elections later this month. So you have the European Union elections where the members of European Parliament are elected and the EU makes all these policy decisions that affect the European Union as a whole. That's the reason why Apple is putting the USB-C port in the iPhone now, because the EU said you have to. So there's a lot of regulations with the EU that get put into place, and it affects a lot of stuff globally, because of how big of a market the European Union is. It's basically most of continental Europe, especially in the West. Germany, France, Portugal, Italy, all of those countries are under EU regulation, and it's millions of people. So if you're operating internationally, you're usually going to be following the EU regulations. And now some of it is advantageous. The food supply is a lot better in the European Union countries because of all these regulations. That's a contributing factor towards it. But of course, there's also a lot of social decay and a lot of nonsense that the state does. And of course, the EU is being an intergovernmental organization, just even more ridiculous. But Le Pen's party, in 2019, 23% in EU elections, up to 32, and Macron's party 22.4 to 15.2. And this is really indicative that Europeans want Europe to be Europe for Europeans, right? They are seeing the effects that this mass migration, that this social decay is having on, not just France, but you're seeing this in Germany. You've seen this in the UK, although they've left the EU. But you've got Greece, you've got Italy, all these migrants coming in that aren't assimilating to the culture, that are committing these heinous acts of aggression on the population, and people want this to stop and they want change. This is why Germany's going more conservative. This is why France is going more conservative. And of course, Macron desperately wants to hold on to the power that he has. So it's like, well, let me call the elections while I still have a little bit of the upper hand. And of course, you're going to have some people who are going to co-conceive over this fact that people want change. They want Europe to be for Europeans again, because they're communists that believe all this gaslighting and propaganda that all these migrants are just poor and battered asylum seekers, just seeking a better life from their oppressive homelands, when they're really economic opportunists. Are really just young men that want to cause trouble. And a lot of this is done very much intentionally to destroy and degrade society. Of course, the thing is that the native population of a lot of these countries have declining birth rates, and the solution is migration. Of course, this is to fundamentally destroy the societies and the cultures that they're in, or the cultures that are in those countries. Especially something like a Germany, where you've got all these cultural customs, you've got this way of conducting yourself. Do you think that the 500,000 Syrian migrants are brought in 2015 are following and integrated into that really well? I would say not. And then, of course, you've got all this welfare statism. You've got people who aren't going to be net taxpayers to the system, and the European population, they're feeling the effects of that. And the fact that Macron is doing this means that they are desperate. They're going to really grip down. So you're going to see a lot of censorship and really oppressive stuff coming from the political class of Europe, as the population is desperately trying to get Europe to be for the Europeans again. So this is really something to keep an eye on. But it's definitely indicative that a lot of the stuff that's been building up for, I'd say, around a decade at this point. 2015, I would say, is when it started with all those Syrian migrants coming into Germany. That was like a real kickoff. You had all this, stuff going on in Cologne with these rape crises and all these sort of events going on, where it was very clear, especially Sweden, there being the no-go zones and all this stuff. So it's been going on for a while, and basically all the European countries, where you've had a lot of this fallout from what the globalists, the people who sit in Brussels and make EU policy decisions are inflicting onto their populaces. They're waking up to it. They are sick of it, and they want it to change, and they are acting accordingly. And it's a very nice thing to see. But I'd say be warned, because this is when shit really hits the fan. This is when it's really going to get messy, because there's a lot of stuff that these states can do to regulate and control the narrative, because in this country, United States, we have the First Amendment. There's a lot of stuff the state is roadblocked from doing. Those roadblocks don't exist in Europe. They can censor, they can arrest, they can do a lot of stuff to their political enemies that they otherwise, or they have a harder time doing in the States, and they're going to do that full force to keep control of the narrative, as much control of the power as they possibly can. But speaking of political persecution, we're going on to the next topic. If you're still with me, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I appreciate all you guys who listen, even if you just listen. But the second article headline reads, AOC says Trump will round up his political enemies, throw her in jail if he wins, right? So Steve Bannon is being told he has to report to federal prison. Donald Trump is going to be sentenced for 34 felonies on July 11th. You've got everything the January 6ers were put through. There were people who were prosecuted for January 6th who were not even in Washington, D.C. on the day that it happened. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is afraid that Donald Trump is going to throw her in the gulag, right? And so is Rachel Maddow, apparently. So this is just extreme projection, right? They want to have this control of lawfare, of the Department of Justice, of the ability to use the state's power to imprison people on the people that they don't like, right? And now that Donald Trump, it seems like he might get back into office, right? He might win the election. It's pretty much, if he doesn't end up in prison, and he can actually run and go on that grandiose campaign tour, I'd say it's very likely that he ends up back in the White House. And I mean, I definitely don't think he's going to be locking people up or going like full gulag communism the way that they think he's going to go on these people. But the fact of the matter is that they'd like to see nothing more than see Trump and Bannon and basically every MAGA person that voices an opinion in prison. Would not mind that at all, but they don't want it to happen to them. They're obviously acting in their own self-interest, and so they're going to say that, there are these noble people that care about rights and being fair and all that stuff, and they just want, this world to exist free of political persecution, but Donald Trump is going to, round people up and put them into camps and jail if he wins. He's going to go on this grand retribution. This is what the media is really saying. They're really trying to distract from the fact that they are using the state really aggressively to imprison as many political opponents as they possibly can before the election, so they can't do anything to help Trump win, right? And this is really what it is. It's just making the people who have a spine and stand up for freedom not put them away, and put all the people who would be inclined to do that scared that they're going to be next, right? So it's just really creating this culture of fear for people who are even slightly freedom-minded. But of course, they are not going to, see things like that. They're going to see things as everything they do is right and noble, that all of this lawfare going on are just, legitimate criminal trials that are holding people to justice. No one is above the law. They're going to be spouting that out until the end of time when they mention Trump and Bannon and the January 6ers and all that stuff. But a lot of this, I would say, if not basically all of this, is just the state determining you're a person that's getting in our way of getting all the chips for ourselves, so we're going to lock you away. And they're going to point the finger at the people that they're locking up, saying if they get to have the keys to the castle, they're going to do what we're doing, right? And of course, they're going to not say that we're doing it, right? Because, all this gaslighting and lying that goes on. And again, Cortez, I don't view her as someone who's orchestrating all of this. She's really just more or less a useful idiot. She's a talking figurehead that just says all this controversial stuff and gets people to be lemmings for the cause. And that's really the way I view her. But the projection is unreal. So Cortez and her class of, political, I guess, elite are the ones who are using the state to engage in lawfare against their political enemies. Now, if Trump gets into office, would he do that? I wouldn't put it below him. It's definitely something I would see him doing, especially, given all the stuff that's happened. But one, can he even do it with all the stuff he'll have working against him? And two, there's a lot of other things I'm sure he'll want to do that'll boost his ego, like that'll be good for his base, and he'll focus more on that, like on the stuff that'll make him be winning. And I think that's more or less what he's focusing around, rather than using the DOJ to go after every single political rival he's ever had, because he has a lot of them. I don't think it's going to be necessarily worth his time. I think he's going to go scorched earth on a lot of stuff if he gets that second term, because he won't ever have to go for re-election. I'm sure they're going to try to impeach him and do all this mad, crazy stuff. It will be an absolute shit show. Just like his first term was an absolute shit show, hilarious to watch. The second term would be even more so. And I think he'd be more focused on getting good policy through and doing all that stuff and weathering the shitstorm that will be, inevitably going through, rather than trying to use the DOJ as his, personal political persecution weapon. That's just the way I see it. You're welcome to disagree, but I think I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and Joker is out. Thank you for being in the Velvet Room with Joker the Fool. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, whether you're listening on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, or Substack. And be sure to subscribe to my Substack, velvetroompublishing.substack.com, to keep up with Machine to Man and all my other projects.